pretend I'm like holding a mic because I don't have one, so this is gonna sound terrible. Okay, this video is gonna be completely different from anything I've done before on this channel. Normally I do like just games and shit and talk about like spooky games, which is fun. However, I am studying game design at uni, and for my final essay, I decided to write about the games and politics and the intersection between the two. And you know, with the recent Game Awards and everything going on there, which is awesome and terrific, and it makes me want to fucking die, holy shit. I decided that, yeah, I'm gonna turn this essay into a video essay. And that's the preceding footage you were about to see. So, I don't know if I'm gonna do anything like this again, but I got pretty high grades on it. I did pretty well, so I'm kind of happy about it. So I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna make it into a video. And that's why this one is completely different. Don't worry, if this fucking sucks, next up we got another niche indie kind of horror game coming up, so stick around for that. Yeah, but we'll see how this one goes. It's gonna be very different.
In today's age, the talk about politics in video games is so prominent in online conversation that it's almost inescapable for most people. From the talk of DEI representation in new and remade games, to the overwhelming influence of the military-industrial complex and games like Call of Duty and Battlefield. Representation is significant, and in a time with people from a majority of different backgrounds working in gaming, why shouldn't there be more representation than ever before in video games? With many influencers and online personalities discussing politics online more than ever before, we see just how important conversations of representation are in our current day and age. With the argument to be made about how all media is inherently political being possible, the question then becomes how much influence does politics have on video games and vice versa? When it comes to media and political ideas, it is tough to separate the two. With most media being able to be connected back to a political idea of some kind. To begin with, the idea of politics in gaming has been spoken about since games first entered the mainstream. I'm fucking smacking the shit out of my mic because it won't stay up. Look at this fucking... To begin with, the idea of politics in gaming has been spoken about since games first entered the mainstream, with games constantly being demonized by the media. This can even be seen before video games with the satanic panic of Dungeons and Dragons. It was believed that the game was driving kids to suicide and murder. Parents in the media then blamed systemic problems kids and teens faced on the game instead of addressing the underlying problems that these kids were facing in their lives. Patricia Pulling was a parent of a child who committed suicide and ran a campaign, blaming it all on the game instead of believing her child had problems in his life that she didn't notice or do anything about. She instead said, quote, "A fantasy role-playing game which uses demonology, witchcraft, voodoo, murder, rape, blasphemy, suicide, assassination, insanity, sex, perversion, homosexuality, prostitution, satanic type rituals, gambling, barbarism, cannibalism, sadism, desecration, demon summoning, necromantics, divination, and other teachings." BBC 2014. Basically, the game was full of terrible, just everything, you know? Wow, what? Moving on from D&D, we can begin to look more into current games and the reactions to them. The reactions to games are just as ridiculous now as it was back in the 80s, with the creation of the woke games list created in 2024 to sort games from woke to not woke. This list is the epitome of this overreaction to games and trying to make everything into a culture war, with games themselves being inherently political and having more inclusiveness than ever before, despite this overreaction to it. With even small ideas of inclusion such as removing gender options in exchange for body options. Small ideas like this make games feel more open to all individuals. People have then taken this and made an issue out of something that was never really an issue. Like, who cares about a body option than a gender option? Like, it doesn't matter. It's nothing. One of the biggest complaints about games that are released now is that they are influenced too much by DEI. DEI stands for Diversity and Equity Inclusion. Overall, DEI doesn't have that much influence on companies and especially games. However, there is nothing wrong with giving opportunities to those that have been historically overlooked in jobs and in the case of games, narratives, and playable characters. There is a company that is heavily involved in the game industry called Sweet Baby Inc. This is a company that works closely with game designers and helps with script writing and consultation with a focus on representation. Overall, this company has no power in the creation of actual games and can only offer ideas on how to include better representation and narrative ideas. This did not stop a group of gamers towards the end of 2023 from blaming this company for all their favorite games going woke.
Sweet Baby Inc., or others, in order to increase their ESG scores and secure extra funding.
These guys greatly overemphasize ESG scores and how important they are. They literally, I think they think this is like what moves the needle in any of these places. No, dog. People want money, okay? People want to make money. They don't care about the actual content. That's why so many indie devs or smaller shops make bangers.
They would use examples such as Alan Wake 2. In the sequel to Alan Wake, a lot was changed from the first game, including adding a new playable character and expanding the story drastically from the first, with the story being told through two different lenses and characters. Spoilers for Alan Wake 1, which you can play, it's cheap as fuck, or after the first game, Alan Wake goes missing, being trapped in the dark place beneath Cauldron Lake, I think? With Alan Wake out of the picture, this opens up the story to a new protagonist. And who better than an FBI agent who is assisted by a character who seems suspiciously similar to the main character of Alan Wake's book. Sega Anderson is the main protagonist of Alan Wake 2, along with Wake himself. She is a black female FBI agent and finds herself wrapped up in the mystery as her family is brought into the horror story as well. Sega Anderson is a great character and helps explore a different angle of the world, as well as making the game accessible to those who may have not played the first. I didn't play Alan Wake 1, and going into Alan Wake 2 was a great experience because I felt like I didn't need that extra context because I was seeing this world through a fresh set of eyes. I wasn't immediately dumped into Alan Wake, which thank God, because if you fucking drop straight into that dark place, goddamn, I would have no idea what's going on. Being introduced to Alan Wake first as like this stranger that she finds like just washed up, that's interesting. That's really cool. Like, I'm like her being like, who the fuck is this guy? Who is this? However, online she received backlash as being seen as forced diversity and a product of DEI. This is an incredibly silly idea, as when you present this argument, you're effectively saying that unless you have a reason to include a person of a minority group, then you shouldn't include them. This is a ridiculous argument and just proves how silly the anti-DEI argument is. I just fucking picked a massive part of my nail off. God damn it, fuck. There should never really be a baseline on what a character should be, and creators shouldn't have to have a reason to put diversity in their games. They should just be able to do it if they feel like it. Like, who cares? With game development being more and more accessible these days, it's become very common for more stories to be told than ever before, allowing more people to tell stories about things they care about and use as much representation as they would like. Many of these stories are really good. The game Celeste on its surface is a simple platformer that follows a girl trying to reach the summit of a mountain. But as the game goes on, the layers start to unravel and we begin to learn more about these characters. Overall, Celeste is a game about a girl accepting herself and discovering who she is while facing the past and the future with all her struggles and journey through life taking the form of a mountain itself. The game strongly resonated with the transgender community, with the story very clearly showing the transgender struggle and learning to accept that part of yourself. With the creator of the game, Maddie Thorson, being a transgender woman herself and saying how much of the game was inspired by her own life. The online right argues that games like this shouldn't exist and wish to eradicate any idea of gender ideology in games. Side note, gender ideology is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. There's no such thing as a gender ideology. I don't even know why I put this in the fucking script. Just agreeing with that is fucking dumb. Gender ideology is not real. Okay, I quickly googled gender ideology because I'm pretty sure it doesn't fucking exist. It's the first article that popped up was the Heritage Foundation, so I know now it's bullshit. It's not fucking real and it's stupid. Around September of 2023, a content creator went on a rant about how Starfield added the option to choose pronouns in the as of the time new Bethesda studio game Starfield.
Yeah, well, guess what? Fucking pronouns!
He spoke about how sick he was of games trying to current day us and use the choice of pronouns as the reason for this. The funniest part about this whole rant is after finishing his rant, he then chooses he, him, and carries on playing the game, which I think is fucking hilarious because that just shows how pointless this all is. You just pick what, if you're a cis straight white male, you're just gonna pick he, him. It's not for you, bro. Adding pronouns to a character creator is such a small and insignificant thing that overall makes no difference to the game itself. This shows how complaints about games making sacrifices to accommodate this inclusion is a bunch of bullshit and is just said by people online who just generally dislike LGBTQ+ individuals and look for any reason to create online discourse surrounding them and their right to exist and be represented in media. Games are a source of media that can include large amounts of representation in it, and this can be seen as political, as sadly some individuals' mere existence is seen as political. This is bullshit. It shouldn't be someone's mere existence shouldn't be seen as political. This is then used by members of the right to make unfair criticisms of games and creators. Throughout video games, there has been a massive variety of genres and topics that are covered, with games being influenced by nearly every facet of the internet and society itself. This can be seen through trends like the rise in war-based shooters. In 1990s, the US Defense Force began to put money into the gaming industry after seeing the growing popularity and seeing how they could create propaganda. This then inspired the creation of military-themed games like Call of Duty and Battlefield. These games underline Western military agendas and values as a prime moral objective. It's well documented the amount of exchanges that were had between the organized military complex and the Call of Duty franchise. They work to ensure that Call of Duty has more in common with Hollywood than any actual conflict. This helps open people up to the ideas that the military presents without needing to fully embrace the horror that is war and the military in general. This is seen a lot in Hollywood. The movie Top Gun in 1986 worked closely with the US Air Force when filming and writing that movie. This allowed for very impressive scenes of people flying aircrafts and focuses the war on an unseen threat that is never specifically named. This movie caused mass sign-ups to the Air Force, as it showed the military to be this fun group of guys just kind of being cool and hanging out. The US military-industrial complex aims to do the same sort of thing with video games. Being a majority male audience, this is a large group of people that the military would like to tap into and get them to sign up and join. This can only be done by working with games like Call of Duty and other military shooters to try and follow that very thin line of making the military out to be this welcoming group where you can learn skills, travel, meet people, and overall not have a terrible time, all the while trying to hide the horrors behind this kind of Hollywood shine that makes wars themselves out to be, in a twisted way, fun. Like, Call of Duty is a fun game, but the ideas it represents are fucking terrifying. If Call of Duty wasn't fun, nobody would play it. In the same way games can be used to present the ideas of the military through rose-tinted glasses, other games take the opposite approach and attempt to tell stories that criticize ideas in the world around us. Ideas that we would often accept as normal. Games are a great medium to tell stories that dissect the world and society. Bioshock is a trilogy that tells a different story in each game that expand upon the previous and grow the world and ideas presented. In Bioshock 2007, you play as Jack, an outsider as he explores the world of Rapture, an underwater city that during World War II all the smartest and brightest and most creative minds, as well as the top artists, and anyone who was anybody, moved to. This was supposed to be a world where there was no limit on the individual, a world outside of the control of the government. People could experiment and create to their heart's content. You know, a true libertarian dream. Free to do whatever you want with no government oversight. The player then gets to explore the aftermath of this world. as the city's ruins is overrun with splicers, enemies in the game hooked on a drug that gives them superhuman powers. Jack also witnesses experimentations done on children and much more horrifying things. Bioshock aims to show what unregulated capitalism can do. It's like this nightmare libertarian landscape where you really see what unregulation does. In our world, we can see what deregulation on large businesses can do, and how it makes everything more unsafe for the working class. Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, has been a vocal advocate for deregulation of corporations, including his own company, Tesla. This same company has caused Elon Musk quite some strife. He is defending against employee allegations of management's lack of compassion of workers' health and well-being in the Tesla factories. There have been instances of people being worked to exhaustion and passing out on the factory floor, with employees working 12-hour shifts for 6 days a week. According to revealnews.org, Musk is said to hate the color yellow, and therefore there are instead grey paint to show warning areas. These allegations speak to how dangerous deregulation is in companies, and how a man with as much money as Elon Musk is able to then work to elect a man that will put him into the government to head a task force that will deal with regulating the groups and regulate companies. Which might be a large conflict of interest? I don't fucking know. What? This, of course, is a giant... whatever. Bioshock years ago in 2007 discusses the threats and dangers of this very thing we're seeing right now in the present, with Andrew Ryan being a fictional character creating his own laissez-faire state to allow science, art, and economy to run its course, with no government oversight. Government oversight isn't a bad thing. It needs to be there. We need regulations to make sure things are safe. Because when things go wrong, it's not the people that own the companies or like the bosses that deal with that. It's the workers. It's the normal working class people that end up dying in horrific factory accidents and lose limbs and shit. Like, it's not fucking Elon Musk sitting there like, oh man, my fucking finger got cut off in a machine accident. He doesn't care. He's sitting on his fucking yacht playing Diablo 4. This is much like how Musk now trying to deregulate businesses to allow it to grow and develop on its own no matter the amount of people that are sacrificed on the way. Bioshock Infinite 2013 takes this idea and shows what happens if we go in another direction. Whereas Bioshock shows the nightmare that is an unregulated hyper-capitalistic society built upon the individual, Bioshock Infinite takes more inspiration from evangelical Christianity, American exceptionalism and nationalism, taking place in a flying city called Columbia, where there is an overwhelming religious presence that dictates most of people's life, and a city that includes segregation and racism. Bioshock Infinite is a warning against extremism, and how dictators can use the idea and face of religion to take control. Much like is seen in America with the Heritage Foundation, a group of evangelical Christians that work to overthrow democracy and take rights away from people. If you don't know, the Heritage Foundation are behind the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which was a years-long plan that was finally done in 2020. The Bioshock trilogy warns of these ideas and breaks them down by looking at the most extreme examples of them and what could happen if we don't change the current trajectory of our society. This is a strong aspect of games, being able to dissect ideas in society and tell stories that are unique and not explored much. Politics in gaming is an inseparable idea. It's the same question as can there be such a thing as non-political media, where the answer is that all media is inherently political. And if you don't see that, then you probably didn't understand the text or where the text is coming from. All media is influenced by something, and mostly stories are influenced by personal ideas and society, and people are complex. The world itself is full of representation, so why shouldn't the games we play be full of representation as well? The idea of DEI and politics in games can all be shown in the announcement for the new Grand Theft Auto, a game that has historically critiqued American imperialism, satirizes American culture, and is full of anti-capitalistic messaging. This is all being missed by a major group of players. When Rockstar announced that one of their leads was going to be a female named Lucia, there was a major backlash saying that GTA had gone woke and been influenced by DEI. This showed how this group really didn't understand GTA as a whole, and how it has always been woke. This is the main point against these gamers that complain about DEI and forced representation, is that they live in an internet hug box and do not understand the underlying text of most games. They don't realize how important representation is in games and how it works in helping us have a more understanding society. How important it is for individuals to feel represented in media. As time goes on, we have had increased representation, but unfortunately still have a long way to go with combating this rise of lack of media literacy, and groups that wish for games to go back to the good old days. And this is why it's so important to understand the intersectionality of politics and gaming as a whole. It's all just like connected, you know? It's the same thing. Media, politics, it's all the same. Thank you for watching. This one was, very different to what I've normally done. I don't normally do stuff like this. I fuck with it. I'm going to instead now go back to playing little niche indie games, or maybe something else. Maybe I'll talk about Gundam or something next. That'd be fun. With that, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna leave now.